Hello from the top of the Alpe, the only one in cycling that gets the definite article, l'Alpe d'Huez. And while we're throwing around praise for yesterday's performances, we should doff a metaphorical crash out to the race organisers. They've designed a brilliant route this year that hasn't given the overall favourites a minute's rest. And their reward is that the race is still in the balance with only 2 stages left to ride before Paris. Tomorrow's time trial and today's up the most famous climb in cycling. Now, it's a short, sharp stage today, 109 kilometres, around 95 before they reach the final climb and the crazed masses on it. And there's plenty of scope for action before then. The first climb of the day is the Col du Telegraph, which peaks at over 1,500 metres, but has no real descent, just more climbing on the way up the Galibier, which is nearly 100 metres lower today because the riders go through the tunnel instead of over the top. The placement of the intermediate sprint is somebody's idea of a cruel joke, just 15 kilometres from the finish in Bourg d'Oisans at the foot of the Alpe. Then it's on to the final mountain of this year's tour, 13.8 kilometres measured out in 21 hairpin bends.
Now this is it, look at the crowd here, there's the sign, 13.8, the finish line sits atop Alpe d'Huez. This is the climb that has seen so many of the big names in the sport of cycling seal their victories. Names like Greg LeMond, Bernardino, Lance Armstrong, you name them. When they've got to the top of this mountain, they've seen Paris in yellow. And now we've got a Canadian, the only Canadian in the race. And amazingly, Paul, there are hundreds of Canadian people on the top today. We met most of them last night. And that rider Hejerdal now is in a perfect position with Pierre Roland to go for the stage win. Not the tour win, but the stage win. And that is a big deal.
And that's what he's looking for. He finished third on the road into gap behind his own teammate. An integral part of that victory for Garmin Cervelo on that occasion. The scariest part of Alpe d'Huez, Phil, is when you come around this corner and then all of a sudden you look up, it's a straight wall in front of you. It kicks up to around about 12% and it is very scary, especially if you're a non-climber.
Anthony Charteau on the right with the maillot jaune. It's a tight fit on these lower slopes, and these early slopes are very, very hard. A massive, massive crowd as BMC. This is like the old days when Lance Armstrong was launched by his team onto the top of the climb. But BMC have been quickly pushed out of the way now.
Well, this is Fuglsang coming to the front. He's had a pretty easy ride as well. He's been in a number of groups out on the course as we're trying to see BMC place Cadel Evans, and then Cadel Evans has got himself the gap because where is everybody else?
Well, they're all stretched out on the climbs here. They're trying to scramble through the gaps. There's Andy Schleck there. Voigtler has gone after Andy Schleck. I'm sure this man cannot have any more strength left in those legs. The flag of South Africa flies over the race. There are no South Africans, sadly, in the Tour this year. Even the devil is learning to sprint as we start the climb of Alpe d'Huez.
Carlos Barredo covers there. You've got the Schleck brothers now coming across number 11. Andy Schleck, did he put too much in yesterday and today in that incredible move of his? Cadel Evans taking responsibility here as he looks over his shoulder. He's ridden alone on a number of occasions. He's come right up to Fuglsang. He was beaten on this slope a few years ago by Carlos Sastre, put a massive big attack in, and Cadel Evans now has got that big diesel engine in full swing.
Now every corner is named, every corner tells you where you are and how high you've climbed. Every hairpin bend, there are 21. These riders will have lost count after the first 2. The concentration now, Cadel Evans knows he's got to ride, he's got to keep his eye on 2 riders, Andy and Frank Schleck, as he rides now for Australia's first victory. It looks as though the yellow jersey, although he came back with an incredible chase, is now slipping through the pack.
Well, we've got an organisation of Leopard Trek on the front. Fuglsang is trying to do the work for Andy Schleck and Frank Schleck. They want to pace him back slowly up to the back wheel of Cadel Evans. But as I said earlier today, Phil, I think the best form of defence for Cadel Evans is attack.
And Christophe Ribland, the rider who tried to go for it, has slipped off the back. Now Evans is pushing on here. The Schlecks are being put on the defensive. Fuglsang is trying to keep them in touch. Is this the move where Cadel Evans gets his revenge after 2 days of facing the attacks from Andy Schleck?
Well, it's what Cadel Evans needs to do now, and that's a great show of defiance by him after all of the hard work he did pretty much on his own yesterday over the final 11.5 kilometres. He took the responsibility. Rein Terme, best young rider at the start of the day. I think that's going to disappear and go onto the shoulders of Pierre Roland by tonight. Who
is still in the lead, let us not forget, riding with the Canadian rider Hejerdal. But this now is Cadel Evans, and coming up alongside him, Fuglsang is bringing up the 2 boys, Andy Schleck and Frank Schleck, and sat behind, a little bit quieter now, is Contador himself.
Well, the damage is being done all over this race, and all of a sudden we're looking at the control of Team Leopard Trek. They've pulled themselves back to Cadel Evans, but where's Alberto Contador? He's still got a couple of teammates in this group. I would think he's hidden in the middle there in the yellow glasses.
Sitting and waiting, and now Fuglsang, how long can he set the pace here? What is Andy Schleck thinking after that long attack when it looked as though they were riding away from Cadel? They outpaced him over the Galibier. Now watch to the left of your picture, because here we go. Will there be an immediate reaction after Alberto Contador? Because he's lost nearly 5 minutes in the Tour de France, and it is only 12 kilometres to go. Fuglsang has lifted the tempo.
Fuglsang has got Andy Schleck on his wheel, and he's riding slowly across the gap. The reaction is coming, though, from Cadel Evans, who's seen this as a danger point. He's only going to follow one man. He's not really concerned about Alberto Contador. He's got a pretty good buffer over him in the standings, but he does have to make sure he keeps in contact with Andy Schleck. There he is. The Australian is locked onto the wheel of Schleck.
The determination of Contador, who wants some consolation from the Tour, and victory at the top of the Alpe would be major consolation for the three-time winner. And you know, I'm not so sure Andy Schleck has got it right now. Cadel Evans has locked into him.
Well, Cadel Evans is locked right onto the wheel there of Schleck. That's all he's going to look for as we look at the damage this race is doing now. It has all come down to the Alpe d'Huez once again.
What a race on Alpe d'Huez here. The defending champion refuses to go out of the television screen and die gracefully. He's fighting his way back. He's too far behind, we think, to win the Tour de France. If he wins by minutes at the top, he might take his time back in the time trial. And that's a pure climber, Paul, the way he accelerates.
Reminds me a little bit of the move that was made by a certain rider from Spain called Carlos Sastre. He laid down the foundations on the Alpe d'Huez of his overall victory, and he needs to take back serious time here, Phil. I reckon he needs to take back a couple of minutes. That is possible by a man like that.
Well, when you open a gap like that with one kick of the pedals, and remember, Contador came out with a plan today which was from the gun to attack the riders. They weren't expecting it. Andy Schleck read it well. Cadel Evans was in mechanical trouble. They've all come back together for the Battle of Alpe d'Huez. What a day this is going to be. And now he's gone out of sight around the hairpin bends as we look at Andy Schleck with sitting in his slipstream Cadel Evans. Overall, Cadel Evans is 57 seconds behind Andy Schleck. That's enough for him if he gets it to the time trial. The battle at the front is for the white jersey and a Canadian stage win.
Well, rider Hagedal and Pierre Rolland look across and say, wow, this is Alberto Contador. He's come straight across the gap to us. Contador is looking for huge time this afternoon. He's also looking for some glory as well. Andy Schleck is concentrated. He knows what he has to do. He has to try and get time between himself and Cadel Evans. But after being up the front of this race for such a long time today and yesterday, I'm not sure he's got the giclette or the attack to get rid of Evans on this climb.
Another hairpin bend coming up. It's a shame we can't see the names because the plaques are all there, and there will be a Frank Schleck bend, of course, as Contador has caught the men who started the moves now, and Pierre Rolland grits his teeth. This guy's a real man for the future. He's only a youngster. As he grits his teeth now, he knows there's a white jersey waiting for him at the top, and that's the way it would go all the way to Paris. This is decision day in the Tour de France. Andy Schleck's probably the king of the mountains. The white jersey could be Pierre Rolland. Garmin Sabello could be the team captains. Meanwhile, this is the scene on the climb. Who's going to win the yellow?
Well, that's the big question at the end of this afternoon, Phil. Cadel Evans just locked onto that wheel now. He's in a very comfortable situation. All he has to do is really watch Andy Schleck, but he needs to keep a very close eye on the time that Alberto Contador might be able to pull back in this race, because Alberto Contador started the day 4:44 behind Thomas Voeckler, but more importantly, he was about 3 minutes behind Cadel Evans.
4:44 behind Voeckler, who is no longer now, so it's 4:29 he is behind Andy Schleck, and that's the important time gap. And then you add on a further minute, so he's 5 minutes or so, or 3 minutes or something ahead of Cadel Evans, that's all. And look at him now. This is the man we've seen win the Tour de France 3 times, riding just like this. Pierre Rolland grits his teeth. He won't give up as he stares at the Norwegian flags. What an incredible tour they've had this year. But now this is about the pass winner versus the other boys who wants his crown.
Well, Phil, at the start of the day, there was a 3-minute 32 gap between Cadel Evans and Alberto Contador. Now, if he goes crazy on this climb and he pulls out a minute and a half or 2 minutes, he could put himself back into the Tour de France this afternoon in the time trial tomorrow.
And no one would have thought that was possible at all. the face of Andy Schleck as he now tries to get rid of Cadel Evans. Evans rides in his slipstream without any problem as he continues up the lower slopes of the climb. Evans does not look in any trouble here, and he may find, if the gap does open, he may have to attack Andy Schleck and steal back seconds off him and close down seconds on Contador.
Well, this is going to be a huge battle. It looks like finally it's a climb too far for Thomas Voeckler, who eventually, after his own predictions, is losing his overall lead in the Tour this afternoon. So, just looking here, number 45, Bauke Mollema, and in fact, in a little while, we'll go around what they call Dutch Corner, corner number 7. It will completely be painted in orange, and there's a big sign out there, and they've been shouting for Bauke Mollema since early on in the morning.
Already going out of focus in the distance, the green Europe car jersey of Pierre Rolland. The battle for second place. Ryder Hezjedal is now feeling the wind behind of the arrival of Andy Schleck and Cadel Evans on the climb. They're going to have to keep chasing Contador. We've got no time checks yet. Yes, we've just got one. They're 36 seconds behind Contador now.
Well, 36 seconds, that makes the difference between Cadel Evans and Contador. 3 minutes now in the overall standings. Cadel Evans, I think, a little bit later on, rather than just watching Andy Schleck, he's going to have to come up and start to work with him to try and pull back the Spaniard.
A minute 21 to the maillot jaune, so Thomas Voeckler is out of the Tour de France now, but who is going to be on top of the podium in Paris? The time trial tomorrow is going to be very, very decisive indeed, despite all the mountains of the Alps.
Well, just inside of a minute is the difference in the overall standings between Cadel Evans and Andy Schleck. That's why he feels confident he can put a minute into Andy Schleck in the individual time trial, but it's a bit risky to do, as we can now see Alberto Contador still looking very comfortable in this race.
Just checks over his shoulder. He's made a huge effort all day here. Rolland will be the carrot now for those chasing behind, because he's in their sights, as the spread is 24 seconds. The first 5 riders on the road. The spread between the first 3 riders in the Tour de France is 57 seconds, and that's not counting Contador, who is fighting his way back into the overall picture.
Well, Contador now is being chased by 2 riders, because all of a sudden now Frank Schleck and Cadel Evans have passed Pierre Rolland on the road.
Contador continues now. Schleck goes past Ryder Hezjedal with Cadel Evans. This is Andy Schleck looking straight into the eyes of Ryder Hezjedal. Has been passed back now. Contador rides alone, half a minute ahead of Schleck, Evans and Ryder Hezjedal at the moment. Everybody is desperate now, and we are not battling for minutes, we are battling for time of a few seconds. Anything will do.
Well, anything will do. You can see that Andy Schleck is in fact starting to slow down, because riders are actually catching back up to Andy Schleck, and that's because of the fact I think he's been in such a long breakaway yesterday, and he's used a lot of energy in this afternoon's race as well.
Well, Cadel Evans may have to try something. If he's got those legs and he feels good, he may have to try his own kind of acceleration and test Andy to see if he's tired, because at 10 kilometers to go for Alberto Contador, he started the day 4 minutes 39 seconds down, and he's fighting his way back into the picture. He's put back 33 seconds at the moment. Well,
he's getting into that zone now, and he's really all of a sudden bounced back in the Tour de France this afternoon, Phil. 30 seconds is the gap that he's got over Schleck and Evans, and he's looking like for a very likely leader, very likely winner of the stage here this afternoon.
Which would be not inconsiderable consolation for the former champion of Spain and the 3 times winner of the Tour de France and the emphatic winner of this year's Giro d'Italia. They now pass under that same 10-kilometer banner. Life's getting a bit complex in the pack here in the race for second place, though, that's for sure. And Evans won't panic. He will be told by his team car the time gaps. He will know exactly where Contador is, as will Andy Schleck. So they're going to hold themselves, because this levels out in the middle as Contador is on the top corner there. And now what's happening? A little tester.
Well, Frank Schleck's having a go now, immediately covered by Cadel Evans, moving up into 3rd position. Andy Schleck, this was what we expected to come, but I think as soon as he sees Cadel Evans there, he'll sit up, and maybe we'll see another counter move coming from Andy.
This is one Schleck sandwich that's going to give them indigestion, because Cadel Evans is marking both of them right now, and he still does not look like a man under pressure. They are using what energy they have left after a week in the Alps to try and dump the Australian, and I'm not sure they can. This man who's lost too much time for the moment to win the Tour de France, but that is a temporary situation. Ask me in another 20 minutes, he might be out to win the Tour de France.
Well, he could be. He's not looking comfortable. He doesn't look like he's enjoying this. It's not the fluid action we've seen before. He's being chased at around about 20 seconds by Pierre Rolland. Rolland is not actually giving up too much space here, and he, in fact, I think is riding an incredible race at 24 years of age. All of a sudden, we may be looking at the renaissance of French cycling.
They've got a couple of good ones coming through this year in the Tour de France, youngsters, and in the next 2 years, yes, the French might at last find a winner since Bernard Hinault back in 1985. And you're looking at one right here. He's riding to the white jersey today as the best young rider in the Tour de France. Round that corner.
Round the corner, it's Andy Schleck come up to the front to take up first position, again ahead of Cadel Evans. Sammy Sanchez is there in the orange jersey.
Well, that was a flurry by Frank Schleck, but I think it hurt him more than it hurt anybody else. He's now slipped back into 4th or 5th place in the pack. His jersey unzipped the whole way. Here's the lonely figure of Thomas Voeckler, who has gone out of the lead of the Tour de France with total pride. Today, he's ridden absolutely brilliantly.
No, he
as
certainly
he starts
has.
his defence on the back here. Now, just hanging on to anything that goes by him, really.
He's trying to hang on to anything going by. He's lost himself a minute and 46 seconds now, and still Pierre Rolland refuses to give up in second position. That group with the Schleck brothers now, Phil, is 40 seconds almost behind the overall lead of Alberto Contador.
Well, a minute, nobody would panic, but much more than that, they might start to panic. Alberto Contador has shown us in previous tours he is a very fast time trialist these days. He has beaten fabulous Cancellara in a time trial as Chambéry, so he knows how to ride a time trial. He can't be discounted.
I don't think he can be discounted. I think if it starts to get up to the 1 minute mark, then 1.5 minutes, then Cadel Evans needs to start panicking a fraction and maybe come to the front and try and nail back Alberto Contador towards the end of this race.
Everybody has cocked the triggers of the guns at Cadel Evans these last few days. He's been reeling from the way he's been attacked. He's used his own strength with no help from anybody to keep his chances alive. Same happened again today with the mechanical when he was with them. And now he's still with them here, and it's Andy Schleck again setting the pace. This incredible rider from Luxembourg with those long gangly legs, and he smashes those pedals on the climb.
Well, he's not asking for any help either. He's the man who dominated the race yesterday. And still this group formed together. Thomas Voeckler is disappearing completely from the picture today.
Voeckler continues to climb, but it's Alberto Contador is heading up to the lone summit. Voeckler is now over 2 minutes behind Alberto Contador, who keeps this incredible rhythm going. Voeckler is even on his own back there. There's an attack by Peter Velits from HTC. Another surprise man. May not be an immediate reply to this, although it looks might be Sanchez is replying.
Well, let's not forget he was 3rd overall in the Vuelta a España last year. He's ridden himself carefully through the mountains, and he's riding with a man looking like a man who knows exactly where his body can go. Sanchez has seen that he's got himself a little bit of a gap there, and he's looking to try and keep himself well up in the top 10 at the end of the day. Now, he could be a dangerous rider, Sanchez. He was one of the strongest riders on the previous Col du Galibier.
He was. He dropped out after a terrific ride through the Pyrenees. He got right up amongst the leaderboard. He's dropped out to 8th place yesterday at the end. He's 5 minutes 20 behind Voeckler and take off 15 seconds. He's 5:05 behind Andy Schleck, who's the leader on the road right now. And but he seems to have recovered entirely today. He's had a very, very good day's racing. But it's still the story of the renaissance of the winner of the Tour de France 3 times, Alberto Contador. This is the picture I love to see, but the riders must never see it.
No, it's absolutely horrendous. Those are the 21 switchbacks that takes the race right the way up to Alpe d'Huez. That's not Alpe d'Huez there, that's just the small town of Oison. A little bit further up, you see the zigzags continue right up, and that's where the finishing line is, right in that hamlet on the top of the Alpe.
And that's still where we've got to go. We have just under 5 miles, 7.7 kilometers to go to the summit. 2:19 back to the yellow jersey, but now Sanchez is also going away. He's not going to be reacted on by the others because he's lost too much time now.
Well, it's now up to brother Frank to do the pacemaking. Cadel Evans just concentrating on the Schleck brothers. He knows exactly which riders he doesn't mind letting go in this race. It's all a question now of starting to calculate.
And rider Hejerdal, who made the move, has found the strength to stay with the Evans-Schleck group at the moment, just coming into our picture there. And that is a tremendous ride by the Canadian to hang on. Looking at the face now of Peter Velits as he comes up to the summit. Well, not the summit, but the next village along the way of Huey. We're now looking at Sanchez licking his lips in the distance, the group they have just left. Rui Costa here. Now he's going backwards from the leaders into the group at the moment, I think.
It's a little move by Thomas de Gent trying to get off the front. Surprising to see him riding at the front end of this race with the men that are in that breakaway group, while a lot further back Thomas Voeckler using huge chunks of time. Phil, I've got him now down at in excess of 2.5 minutes in arrears.
Yep, he'll struggle all the way to the top, but he's fighting for a top 4 finish in the Tour de France now, and he's in the 4th position in the Tour de France, judging by his time gap just now. Just off the podium in Paris. That was the position that Samuel Sanchez was in last year, and he wanted to be top 3 this year. At the moment, he's in 8th position now. Alberto Contador, is he doing enough to at least get on the podium? That's not a bad place to be as the defending Tour champion in the first 3 positions. This is certainly a determined day out for him.
Well, he really is going for it this afternoon. He knows what time he has to do. He's looking at a time difference between himself and Cadel Evans at the start of the day of 3 minutes and 32 seconds. And currently, Phil, he's put himself an awful long way back. And Cadel Evans now, I think, is going to start to look as if he's a little bit on the defensive.
Well, just looking here at the moment, the gap is beginning to be prized opening. Voeckler's group is back to 2:40, but the gap is still holding here. Sanchez is putting Velits into trouble now as the red jersey of Evans takes up the running again. 1 minute 42, our computer is saying, as Contador gets on with it. Andy Schleck is having to do the pacemaking, and Cadel Evans follows this time from Riblon, then Cunego, then Frank Schleck, and then Ryder Hezerdahl. And the cheers now are for Alberto Contador. They were boos at the prize presentation nearly 3 weeks ago. Now they are cheers.
Well, you know what, Phil, this is an amazing ride back into the Tour de France by Contador. 36 seconds he is ahead of Sammy Sanchez, 53 seconds ahead of the Andy Schleck group, and that's getting very close up to the 1 minute mark. But now I think Andy Schleck himself is starting to take responsibility of making sure Alberto Contador doesn't get too much of a time advantage.
I think you're right. They've got to move in now because he's getting the sort of time gap which could lead to bigger time gaps for him in the time trial tomorrow. And it could all turn around in the last insignificant, we thought, 42 kilometres time trial around Grenoble tomorrow, which is literally down the bottom of the valley from where they raced today, enacting their final day in the Alps. And what a day this has been. Sanchez is now picking up Pierre Rolland. Rolland's seen him. He might try and raise the pace just a little.
Well, he'll try to take a little bit of inspiration from seeing the way that the Spaniard is riding. He'll try and get onto his wheel and hold onto it for as long as possible, because what he's looking at is the possibility of trying to get himself a top 3 finish. And of course, at the end of the day for the Frenchman, he wants to try and get himself the best young rider competition. He's only 24 years of age.
The lone furrow of Alberto Contador, 27 seconds back to Sanchez and Rolland. A minute exactly now, the computer says. So the reaction here by Andy Schleck is closing the gap. And Cadel Evans, in that style he always has of concentration and rocks out the saddle, he's just sitting there and waiting. I think there's plenty left in that tank.
Well, I think we're looking now, Phil, at a gap that's come up to around about the 1 minute mark over the Cadel Evans group, and I would say it's starting to get a little bit precarious, because if Contador continues to ride like that, he gets a 1.5 minute advantage. Watch out for him in the individual time trial tomorrow, because it's 40 kilometres long, and with a climb in the middle, it could be well suited to Alberto Contador.
But 55 seconds now, and that's all it is, and they've gone back to 56 as I speak. So that's less than a minute now, and the road doesn't get really easier, but very shortly he's going to come round the corner. He'll see the chalets of the Alpe right in front of him, and they are still 3 miles away from the summit. So Contador leads the race at the moment at just on 28 seconds. We've got the group chasing them now, call it chase 2. And then we've got in that group Frank Schleck, Andy Schleck, Cadel Evans. Thomas Voeckler, the erstwhile leader of the Tour de France for more than a week, is sitting off the pace by nearly 3 minutes now. The face and determination of Andy Schleck, who has really raced this Tour de France to win it.
Well, he certainly has, but Alberto Contador is the man doing the serious damage on the slopes of Alpe d'Huez. He said after the Giro d'Italia this year, he didn't actually have any competition from the end of the Giro up until the Spanish National Championships, and he was caught out there by a very good move by Jose Rojas. Now, he said at that point, Phil, there's one race I want to win this year, there's one more stage that I want to win, and that is Alpe d'Huez.
Well, corner after corner, the riders tick off. They can no longer see Alberto Contador, his grey jersey blending into the grey colour of the rock here of Alpe d'Huez. Number 11 with the red number on. Andy Schleck pushes on. Right behind him is Cadel Evans. Further up the road, it's the lone figure of Alberto Contador, three-time champion. And really, they shouldn't be running in front of those cars. It's not a healthy thing to do.
No, he's going around Dutch corner there. You can see it's painted in orange. They're dressed in orange today, not for the Basque supporters, but this is a little bit of Holland, and the crowd are going crazy.
This is Dutch corner, and they had hoped to be cheering Robert Hessing up to the lead here. He's had a terrible tour. Again, crashes for him. So they're reserving their cheers now for Alberto Contador, and that'll be quickly followed by Andy Schleck, Cadel Evans, Frank Schleck, Riblon. Ryder Hagedal is there, and Tommy Danielson has got himself back up here as well, the American, and also the little prince Damiano Cunego.
Well, he's done a great job, Tommy Danielson. A little tap on the shoulder there from Ryder Hagedal. Said, look, mate, I'm almost cooked here this afternoon. You stay in contact, because we could be laying the foundations down for the team victory for Team Garmin Cervelo of the United States. But this man is doing a phenomenal job, Alberto Contador. I don't think I've ever seen him suffer quite as much as he's doing here. He's got the pride of a nation on his shoulders, the pride of Spain.
24 seconds, it's back to Sanchez and Pierre Roland. 57 seconds back to the Schlecks and Cadel Evans. That's ironic, because 57 seconds is the difference between Andy Schleck and Cadel Evans in the overall classification. Advantage at the moment to Andy Schleck. The yellow jersey at 2 minutes and 45 seconds. An immense crowd at Dutch corner, as many as we've ever seen, I think, Paul.
No, they actually queue up there for a couple of days to make sure they get it reserved for Holland, and you can see the Dutch flags waving nice and high. And if you ever fancy an all-night party, well, that's the place to go the day before the Tour de France actually comes to finish on the Alpe d'Huez.
Now, Contador, who started the day 4:39 behind Andy Schleck, is now 3 minutes 30 behind him in the overall classification at the current time gains. He won't take 3:30 back off Andy Schleck in the time trial, so he's got to push on. They are fighting to save the Tour de France behind him and stop last year's champion getting it.
Exactly, kind of forgot really the second and third on the road. The Olympic champion, Sammy Sanchez, he's looking for 25 seconds. The rider in green there is Pierre Roland, the young Frenchman, 24 years of age. At the end of today, he will probably be the best young rider in the Tour de France. And back to the Schleck group, it's 57 seconds. Now it's Frank's turn to come forward and do a bit of pacemaking for brother Andy. Cadel Evans just sitting there. All he has to do is sit and watch these two riders. Those are the two most dangerous riders for him in the overall standings. Thomas Vauquelin now in with Remy de Gregorio. He's losing huge chunks of time, but he's not lost any of his morale, and he's not lost the support of the French crowd either, because they know how well this man has done over the last 10 days of racing. He now is also going through Dutch corner, all dressed in orange, resplendent. The men of orange have come to enjoy the Tour de France, and there we can start to see the signs for Alberto Contador. Viva ESP, Viva España. That's what they're shouting this afternoon on the sides of this road, as Contador now continues to dance. An unbelievable style, this man from Spain.
The Schleck brothers are under absolute pressure now, and look at the face too of the yellow jersey as the yellow jersey continues to fight. 2 minutes and 51 seconds. The crowd are pushing him up this, well, everything but pushing him up now. I don't know what he's saying. He's shouting at himself, I think, to tell himself to go harder, go harder. This man will not let that jersey go. This is a huge battle. The two brothers from Luxembourg. There's never been two brothers from Luxembourg at this level of cycling ever in the sport. And they have been told by the management to go, 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 and they're not worried about the fact they're towing up Cadel Evans.
Well, you know, Andy Schleck may well have something up his sleeve when it comes to the individual time trial. If you remember last year, for a long time in the individual time trial, he actually rivaled the speed of Alberto Contador, and it was only a question of the difference in the wind down towards the end that actually tipped the scales towards the advantage of Contador.
Contador carries #1, three-time winner of the Tour de France. The crowd wave him through here, a little bit more passive than lower down the slopes. A Spanish Basque flag just being waved at him here as he continues to climb up towards the summit of Alpe d'Huez. Behind at 21 seconds, Sanchez Roland, 5 kilometers to the finish, 3 miles. You can actually see the chalets on the top, but we can't show them to you at the moment. Peter Velits, Thomas de Gent are at 40 seconds, and the Schlecks and Evans are at 56 seconds. They're holding him, but boy, what hard work. The crowd again a little bit crazed at the moment here as they try to close down the gaps. The spread is 2 minutes and 53. It's 1:05 now. They've opened a little bit of gap on the Schleck group. Now, Schleck is having a word with Evans here, and Evans is saying, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're saying. They're trying to talk to each other, and I think that Andy Schleck wants Cadel Evans to start chasing. And Cadel, I think, has said no.
Well, he's just going to do one thing. Cadel Evans has only one thing he needs to do, and that's to watch Andy Schleck, because he believes that he can beat him in the individual time trial. A little shake of the head there. I think he said, no, mate, I'm not going to work with you this afternoon.
If you're outnumbered 2-1, would you help?
Absolutely not. He knows what his tactics is. He's seen the attacks come from all of these guys. The damage is being done at the back here, because I have to say, Thomas Voeckler at 5 kilometres to go is still trying to keep himself in this Tour de France. He won't lie down, this man. He will go down with a fight.
This will be Frank Schleck leading the group now over the top at 4 kilometres to go. Well, not over the top, still climbing.
Climbs all the way to the summit here as Frank dispenses of the sunglasses here this afternoon as he continues to nod on his machine. He realises this is a very tough end to the Tour de France, and tomorrow, let's not forget, we've got to do it all again and come out with an individual time trial.
Sanchez looks at Roland. There can't be much left in that youngster's legs, but he's still hanging on to Samuel Sanchez.
There's not very much left in the legs of Alberto Contador now. Let's not forget, he's the man who made the move early on in the race over the first kilometres of the Col du Telegraph. It's now down to 12 seconds, the difference between Contador and the Olympic champion Sammy Sanchez and Pierre Rolland.
I do believe they are going to catch him. Now, as you tell me all the time, Paul, Sanchez is a great friend of Alberto Contador. What's going to happen when he catches him?
You go for the win, mate. Why wouldn't you? Because Sammy Sanchez is an Olympic champion. He doesn't want to drag Pierre Rolland up to the top of this climb, though, and he's asking the young Frenchman, do you want to work with me? I wonder what language they're speaking.
He just said no. He just shook his head quite plainly and simply. So it's up to Sanchez. You can't come this close to the head of the race on a stage like Alpe d'Huez and give it away. So you've got to go for it in the end. And Pierre Rolland, remember, the French have not won a stage of this year's race. They're running out a road as well.
So further down the slope, Phil, it's almost 3 minutes now for Thomas Voeckler. He's lived the dream for 10 days and he's had the weight of France on his shoulders. I think they were all beginning to think that he was going to win the Tour de France. They thought that if he could survive to the top of the Col de Galibier, he could take it all the way up to Paris.
And look at this now. Sanchez has brought up to Contador Pierre Rolland. You can see his face to see how hard the climb is, and Rolland has gone through on the inside, and I'm just wondering if he's made a move there because the camera's missed it, but I think Pierre Rolland attacked immediately. There he is.
Well, I tell you what, that's very surprising as Sammy Sanchez made the move right the way up and he caught Alberto Contador, and at that point, I think when he went round that corner, it was so steep, he was caught out of breath.
Well, that was a great piece of thinking for the youngster in France in green here, Pierre Rolland. Contador just about hooked up, but already at his limit is Samuel Sanchez. If Rolland slows down, Sanchez might come back here. But this is a different battle. This is the battle for the win. If they start this infighting, then the boys from behind are going to close in. Currently, they're 63 seconds, just gone up to 66 seconds behind.
Well, how happy are the French going to be with this Tour de France now, Phil? Because they've had the yellow jersey for 10 days on the shoulders of Thomas Voeckler, and now they could very well be looking at the possibility of a stage victory on one of the most iconic races, most iconic mountains that the Tour has to offer.
And on the same team as the yellow jersey, Thomas Voeckler. Then Cadel Evans has gone. This is the answer now for Australia. Now, can Schleck contain himself? He's gone with him. He never misses a move, does he, Andy Schleck?
He does not miss a move. There's attacks all over the slopes of this mountain now as we're racing to try and win the yellow jersey. Other riders are racing to try and win the individual stage, and Cadel Evans has almost got himself across to Damiano Cunego in the blink of an eye.
Cunego won't know what's coming on, and Pierre Rolland has dropped Contador. France is racing to its first stage win on the iconic stage of Alpe d'Huez, and on a day when Europcar lose the individual lead, they get the new man in the white jersey and could be a stage win as well.
Well, it's amazing to think that Sammy Sanchez did the bulk of the work coming across there. He caught up his mate Alberto Contador. They're shouting at each other to work together now to try and get back to the Frenchman just a little bit further up the road. Alberto Contador has given everything this afternoon. There's the Frenchman just around the corner looking back to see what the gap is. Oh, well, I can tell him it's 11 seconds.
It's a winning gap, I think. I better correct myself. It's his third Tour de France, but we didn't know him. He was on a different team last time and he never ever distinguished himself, but he has now, as he's gone to the new Europcar team, inspired as the man who's looked after the yellow jersey of Thomas Voeckler over every mountain and kept him in yellow for as long as he could. Now he's going to try and get the best young rider's jersey and the stage win. Sanchez will be kicking himself because he took him up, and Evans goes again. And this time he never misses. He's after him again. Andy Schleck has gone. They've gone around Peter Velits and Thomas de Gent.
Well, now Evans is looking for second and third place on the road, or fourth place on the road, because just ahead of him now, not too far ahead, are these two riders who are losing incredible chunks of time as they go on the Flamme Rouge, the red kite. 1,000 metres to go for the Frenchman.
And you know, by the end of this day, we won't know the winner of the Tour de France either. It's going to be so close, and it goes down to a little time trial around Grenoble tomorrow, 42 kilometres. After all these thousands that we've ridden through this really tough course, Pierre Rolland is grimacing with pain here. He's got that little bandage, little plaster which widened out his nostrils so he can get more air in across the bridge of his nose. How is he going to feel here, climbing up this hallowed road here all the way to the summit of Alpe d'Huez, and to an enormous cheer. Alpe d'Huez, a French winner, a white jersey. They lose the yellow, it'll be a forgotten thing.
Well, Sammy Sanchez has gone. This is a last scuttle across. He's left Alberto Contador behind. Contador, I have to say, was the champion of the day today, the bravest man out in this bike race, but the man who's taken advantage of a rough day of racing on the final day of the Alps is a Frenchman, Pierre Rolland. About 500 metres to go. He's going to take the left-hand turn very short, left-hand turn very shortly, and he'll see the finish line in front of him.
And he climbs all the way up to the line. Listen to the cheers now as he lines up for the finish. We've seen all the stars of the Tour de France do this one. He can still drive. The time doesn't worry too much now. This is going to be a huge cheer, and the Frenchman gets the win at Alpe d'Huez. As the crowd cheer, a two-arm salute, look, it's me, and he gets a white jersey as well. And it's the Olympic champion, Samuel Sanchez, who comes home. And for many, the hero of the day, Alberto Contador, who will cross the line in third place.
Well, Alberto Contador tried to do everything to turn this race upside down this afternoon, and what a phenomenal performance by him. 34 kilometres an hour. Not really a good time to remind you that the elimination time this afternoon will be about 25 minutes. And I would think there's a lot of riders a long way back. Andy Schleck now is coming up to the line, and he's caught up everybody.
Taking on Velits as they come in. Schleck determined. Evans must keep that gap closed down. There'll be time gaps if they don't. As they race towards the line now, Velits is going to take on Andy Schleck. Look at this. And there'll be no split time here because Evans is making a dash for the line. Evans wants to prove a point, and he usually finishes off with victory, but today he'll have to pay second fiddle to Peter Velits, who is going to survive best. But in second place, it's Cadel Evans. I reckon tonight, in hindsight, he may have won the Tour de France tomorrow, so he sits 57 seconds behind Andy Schleck when they start tomorrow in the time trial. And this will seal up the team Garmin-Cervelo as they finish Ryder Hesjedal and Tommy D'Angelo. But tomorrow, Paul, it will be Andy Schleck in the maillot jaune.
It will be Andy Schleck. What a fight by the Schleck brothers here this afternoon. And there's going to be a huge cheer also, because you can hear them and they can just about see the yellow jersey coming around the corner. That's Thomas Voeckler. He's ridden exceptionally well, I have to say, today, Phil. I don't know where he's got all of his strength from, because he almost made it back into the group.
To the crowd. He's getting a bigger cheer than the winner of the race today, and he's determined to show his colours at the front of this group. He had 15 seconds at the start of the day now, and he's lost 3 minutes of that, but it doesn't matter. He has gone out in a cloud of glory today, and well done to Voeckler. He won't be in yellow tomorrow, but he'll certainly be a better known person because of it.
The better man on the Europcar team today, though, was his chief bodyguard, Pierre Rolland. He beat Samuel Sanchez, who'd helped him up to Contador by 14 seconds, while Contador himself finished another 9 seconds down in third. Peter Velits lost to the cameras in no man's land for most of the climb, led home the group containing Cadel Evans and the Schlecks. That group was at 57 seconds. Andy Schleck was the last man in it before the big gaps started opening up. The Garmin pairing of Ryder Hesjedal and Tom Danielson came in next to them in at 15. Rein Taaramäe came in with Evan Basso 2 minutes 6 behind Rolland and losing his white jersey to him. And there was no heroic race to the line to save the yellow jersey this time. Thomas Voeckler knew it was gone by the time he crossed the line in 20th, 3 minutes 22 behind his teammate and over 2 minutes behind the Schlecks and Cadel Evans. It's still been a great tour for Europcar though. The yellow jersey for 10 days, and Pierre Rolland taking the first French stage win of the race on Alpe d'Huez, and the lead in the Best Young Rider competition to boot.
J'ai été le lieutenant du maillot jaune pendant 10 jours. J'ai tenu ce rôle. Et voilà, la récompense du travail, c'est... Voilà, Thomas, il m'a dit vas-y Pierre, t'occupes plus de moi, moi c'est fini. J'y suis allé et j'ai remporté l'étape. Je pouvais pas rêver mieux. Je me suis dit dans ma tête, il m'a donné ma chance, je peux pas décevoir, faut que je gagne. Faut que je gagne.
So here's the way the standings look after stage 19. Andy Schleck is the new leader of the race, 53 seconds ahead of his brother and 57 ahead of Cadel Evans. Thomas Verkler is out of the podium place. As things stand, 2 minutes 10 seconds down in 4th place. Damiano Cunego holds on to 5th, 14 seconds ahead of Alberto Contador. Samuel Sanchez is 7th now at 4 minutes 22, while Ivan Basso slips to 8th, 4 minutes 40 behind the new leader. And there he is, leading the Tour for the first time in his career. And as times to take the yellow jersey go, 2 days before the end isn't bad timing. Let's hear from Andy Schleck and all the day's protagonists.
Yesterday was a great attacking ride, today you had to defend. Tell me this, at one point you turned to Cadel and you were talking to him. What were you saying to him?
Well, I asked him if he wants to ride, because it was only Frank and me riding, and I was doubting what his plan was, but then of course he wanted to attack me to get some seconds out of me, that's why he didn't ride. But his plan failed.
57 seconds in the time trial on Cadel. Confident?
Yes.
Cadel, 57 seconds, job done today.
Oh, long way from yellow still, long way from yellow.
You ride a nice aggressive race today, Cadel. Are you happy with the way it went?
Could have done without the problems.
Cadel, Andy was trying to speak to you on the way out. What was he saying?
Oh, I think he wanted me to ride.
Yeah.
They're in two for yellow. I'm alone. I rode enough in the wind yesterday. Which way are we going, Trudy?
We're going to go around to the
42 kilometres tomorrow to make up 57 seconds. That's always been the game plan, Cadel.
I've been in the same position twice before and I failed twice before, so my odds aren't that great.
Today was a different day for me. All days have a lot of pressure, and today is different. Today go attack in the first day of the climb, and after I saw what happened. No, for me only enjoy the day.
Now, one jersey was definitively decided today. Samuel Sanchez's 2nd place, combined with Andy Schleck's 9th, was enough to make him the king of the mountains. And apart from his one bad day yesterday, the way he's ridden in both the Alps and the Pyrenees makes his polka dot jersey thoroughly deserved.